The Biden administration's flagship ideological conference is currently underway in the nation's capital. On Wednesday, the second Summit for Democracy officially begins, bringing together delegates from over 120 nations for in-person and online discussions in the United States, Costa Rica, the Netherlands, South Korea, and Zambia. Prime Minister Narendra Modi will virtually address the leader-level plenary session on the Summit of Democracy this evening. Summit for Democracy is a term used to refer to a proposed gathering of leaders from democratic countries around the world to discuss and address issues related to democratic governance and the protection of human rights. The first summit was held on December 2021, with the aim of promoting democracy and countering authoritarianism on a global scale. However, critics of the initiative have argued that it is an attempt by the United States to assert its influence and promote its own interests on a global scale, rather than genuinely promoting democracy and human rights. Others have expressed concern that the summit could be divisive, with some countries being excluded on the basis of their political systems or alliances. As the United States prepares to host its second Summit for Democracy, the Chinese newspaper Global Times published an article headlined, "US uses ideological bias to split world, aims for confrontation." The use of phrases such as ideological bias and aims for confrontation imply that the US is acting in a self-interested and confrontational manner, rather than engaging in dialogue and seeking common ground. According to Chinese experts, the second Summit for Democracy lacks any significant new developments compared to the first event held in 2021, and instead represents a form of pseudo-democracy that masks the true intention of US hegemony. They says that the criteria for inviting guest countries are based on Washington's diplomatic preferences. And this would reinforce the US's ideological prejudices and help it with its plan to divide the globe, rather than bring it together. And that this summit is a central tenet of President Biden's program for restoring American leadership on the international stage. Furthermore, the analysts suggest that the US has its own internal governance problems, and its political system is plagued by partisan struggles that continue to divide the nation. The report suggests that the US, despite claiming to be a defender of human rights, suffers from various problems, including corruption in politics, racial discrimination, gun violence, police brutality, and economic inequality. The report alleges that these issues are widespread and undermine the basic rights and freedoms of the American people. On Tuesday, China's State Council Information Office issued its report on human rights violations in the US in 2022. It demonstrated that human rights legislation and justice in the United States have regressed significantly, making it more difficult for Americans to enjoy their basic rights and freedoms. The report also suggests that the US prison system is overcrowded and engages in forced labor and sexual exploitation, leading to a modern form of slavery. Additionally, the report argues that since the first Democracy Summit in 2021, the bad situation of US democracy has not been improved, citing the recent shooting in Tennessee as evidence of the ongoing problem of gun violence. The report stated that the terrible gun problem has not been solved or eased at all, and it's even worsening, and this shows the infirmity of US democracy. The statement implies that the US is not a functional democracy, and its civil rights and freedoms are merely empty rhetoric. As a result, the US is not qualified to lecture others on democracy and human rights, it stated. Chinese experts believe that this summit will serve as a platform for the US to use democracy and human rights as pretexts to divide other countries and gather a group of followers to target countries that do not obey US hegemony. According to Liu Xiang, a democracy summit, under failed internal governance and countless social problems, is meaningless. Liu believes that the summit would only be meaningful if participants discussed ways to address the problems facing US democracy. However, Liu argues that the US is not interested in such a discussion. Instead, the US wants summit participants to recognize the US as a beacon of democracy and to follow its leadership in condemning those who are not democratic enough. Liu asserts that this approach is detrimental to the international community and will not produce any positive results. In summary, the experts believe that the Democracy Summit is meaningless and that it should not be taken seriously.